Want me to start at the beginning? Paragraph B of 168-2 is amended to read in full. No person shall park any vehicle on any street, park, or other village property for a period exceeding 24 consecutive hours, except for a motor vehicle, passenger or commercial, automobile, or truck. Paragraph C is amended to read in full. No person shall park any vehicle on or within the shoulder or breakdown lane of Route 9 within the village of Round Lake, except for an emergency with respect to such vehicle, such as a mechanical malfunction. There is a presumption that any vehicle parked on or within shoulders or breakdown lane of Route 9 within the village of Round Lake is parked in violation of this subsection, and the burden of proving an emergency shall rest on the person charged with violating this subsection. And those are the changes. Tom, did you want to add anything to that?
Simply that among other changes, we want to make it clear that by posting signs that says you can park here, that provides an exception to the general rule that you can't park a vehicle on village pavement, whether it's just two wheels or all four wheels. We have a couple of streets that you can park on. For example, one side of Saratoga Avenue, and that was done by resolution. I'm not sure that was adequate to allow parking there. We want to make it clear that by the erection of signs, the village can provide for parking at any location within the village.
And I suspect that several of you were here for parking in Griffin's Ridge. We were not planning on discussing that. We don't have enough information on that. We will be putting out a survey or maybe discussing it in an HOA meeting, one of the two, to get a feeling for what the residents of Griffin's Ridge would prefer. Would they prefer on-street parking, except for November 1st to March 31st to allow for snow plowing, or which side of the street they prefer. We just don't have enough information to make any decisions on it. So. Any questions on this?
I have one question.
Yes.
Paragraph C, this I want to carry now. No parking on Route 9. I don't have the authority, or didn't have the authority to ticket anybody there. Are we changing that? State highway.
Yes, and I have made the sheriff aware of the problems. The problem, if you're not aware of it, is that during peak season, you'll have 30 cars parked along Route 9. And I've been personally riding my bike up there, and I've had a choice between swerving into 55-mile-an-hour traffic or hitting a car or having a door open. So it's a little nerve-wracking. So I've asked DOT to put no parking signs up there and asked the sheriff to enforce it. And we'll continue working on that over the winter. It's actually a problem in the winter too, but there aren't bicyclists in the winter because the lake gets heavy use in the winter as well.
For ice fishing.
Any other? Yeah.
So I understand the local law that we're updating, but as far as deciding which streets will get that posted, the sign posted, I know Griffin's Ridge said information. Is that what the process is for any other streets that may be under consideration?
Yeah, I mean, the board has to decide. For example, the street out here was made one way years ago, and the board had to discuss it and approve it in a similar manner.
What this is essentially doing is allowing us in the future, as long as we post a sign in the future, that will automatically mean that that parking is acceptable, we won't have to produce a resolution, and to your point, Tom, the resolutions might not have even been
Yes,
copacetic with the law and understood anything, so
we
this
can do
will,
that by resolution as opposed to amending our local law.
yes,
So there's nothing in here that would prevent, after the appropriate investigation, allowing parking within the roads on Griffin's Ridge. In fact, it would make it easier to do so.
and I guess it's a good time to get that information going forward too, because we've only got 10 days until November 1st as it is, so. I think the consensus with the board was that if we were to allow street parking, it would be after April 1st until November 1st, so we have at least several months to get that feedback.
And
from those
we
residents.
obviously have not been asking Mr. Clayton to enforce it because there's so many construction vehicles over there that doesn't really make any sense to demand to enforce it at this point. Any other comments on this topic? Okay, the public hearing on the local law is closed at 6:55. We have a presentation from Jeff Speech, New York Forester. If you're interested in staying for that, that will be starting shortly.
If he shows up.
He's right there.
I guess while we're waiting for 7 o'clock to go around, Bob? Mr. Clayton?
Bob,
The Route 9, although it is a federal road maintained and patrolled by the state, it's nevertheless within the village. So that parking violation on the shoulder, I don't see why you cannot write a citation for
Before this, I was told I couldn't.
that. Pardon, say you can't?
I was told I couldn't, and I took the job.
Oh, well,
Well, then Mary Dixie Sachs said no, and a couple of times I asked and was told no.
my only concern would be for your safety.
Safety, yeah.
For your safety.
I have some stick-on red lights, if I'm gonna use it. Blinking red light is legal, it's not rotating. I'll do it. I can spend all day ticketing there. Some days you can't even get through. It's too little open roads when you park trailers.
Just be very careful. Without a uniform, without a badge. The authority other than your say-so to a bunch of people who are from God knows where and may not be very happy with somebody, as I just described, telling them they gotta get parking.
I would certainly wait until we can get DOT to put some big no parking signs down there.
Yeah.
Or maybe, do we have the authority to?
I would let the sheriff or the state police work.
They won't, yeah, they won't do it.
I know they won't do it. They said they're not concerned years and years ago. So,
But as far as
so there was, still is a bad accident.
As far as people not being happy, nobody was happy with me. I worked for Stafford County.
Well, it's a different
I
world now.
know, but at least
Tom, do we have the authority to put no parking signs along there?
no.
Okay,
We used to have them nailed to the tree.
yeah.
no.
Yes.
What if they would just issue a warning, or alert people out there, is no parking there? You know, maybe the piece of that says no parking along the line, and you know, maybe you get a repeat offender to address it further, but there's really no more just informational that we are watching.
Yeah,
there
that's
is no
certainly
parking.
something to consider in the spring.
And that's why there's no reason for people to get a consultation.
Okay, 7 o'clock, I'll open the meeting. The village board October 20th meeting of the Board of Trustees. We have a presentation before we have public comment from Jeff's speech from supervising forester for the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. He has a presentation here that I will try to get going. That's the easiest place for me back there. Just stand back there. So, I'm not used to having this many people in here. It's kind of crowded. However you feel most comfortable. Well, then I can advance it as we go too. So, if that helps. Give me a second to. Remember how to share screens. That's all for you. While that's getting set up, probably the first couple of slides are an introduction of myself, so let's do that. Jeff Speech, I'm a forester for the DEC. I've worked in several areas, worked in New York City for quite a while, worked now in the Warrensburg office covering the region here, which is 8 counties from Saratoga up. A lot of different experiences in my life, especially working with the DEC and parks, and also many years working with the Boy Scouts and teaching at their national camp school. So I'm quite comfortable with the outdoor topics, and the last several years been working with this urban and community forestry program to try and spread some information across this region on the program itself, and try to get some of the communities, especially the smaller communities, where it may not at first sound like it makes sense, to learn a little bit more about the program and then get you involved. I heard tonight already some talk here about parking, and that's one of the things I'm just going to mention very quickly in the presentation. I have a lot of handouts that I can provide. I did give everybody here at the table a set of them. However, most everything today is also available digitally, you know, the DEC website, or Google anything you want and you can get information on it. But I do have lots of handouts, so all these brochures, things like that, I can send or offer later. All right, I think just
there we go.
the right arrow. Advance
The right arrow. Okay, so we go.
You want me to advance it?
No.
Just kick me when you want me to do it.
Nah, I don't want to kick you. I've been here a few times around Lake. I was here a couple of years ago, met with Gary, one other person. We were talking about trees. Here again, a week or so ago, just to take another look around to get myself a little more familiar. But I love it. And for years traveling on the Northway, I always see the sign that said Round Lake Burnt Hills, and my great aunt lived in Burnt Hills. So I always wondered what Round Lake was. And then I came and found out. So that's my bio. I did that. So we don't have to spend time on that. But within the DEC, just like every other organization, you got to figure out where you are. So you may have heard of Lands and Forests. That's the one that does all the land management. And then inside of there, there's many more units, and you finally get down to where we're housed in the private land services and urban and community forestry program. The reason I put this picture in is twofold. One, everybody likes to see a tree-lined streets. They like to, you know, the benefits of trees. You enjoy seeing that. This picture was taken for a very specific reason, because it was pre-Superstorm Sandy. This neighborhood got hit with Superstorm Sandy. Salt water inundated the whole neighborhood, inundated these London plane trees and killed them all. So I don't have the after picture, but you can use your own imagination what this neighborhood looked like 1 year after the storm came through. All the trees were dead, they were all removed. And then the program, similar to what I'm working with, gets involved where we try to do education, we try to get grants out there to help with removal and replanting. and all the other issues that come up when something like that happens. But I really do like that picture because it shows the progress that some communities can make in having really beautiful tree-lined streets. This, of course, is yours right out front. I was there a few days ago looking at these white oaks, which always strike me because it's hard to find white oaks that are doing well. And these were producing acorns, and the acorns were already developing radicals and starting to grow in the soil up front, which I thought was really neat. Some of them had beat the squirrels. So good for you guys. That's great. And then right across the street from that, we've got another green space, and in there, you've got 2 standing dead Scotch pine trees. Not unusual to have dead trees, but those are something, again, with our program, we would help get an inventory done, and it would identify those to be removed. And even further along in the grants, you could apply for money to have some tree removals and tree plantings done. We know the benefits of trees. Everybody knows them. I like the list, but I think off the top of your head, you can get 5 of those and 10 and 15 more. I found it fantastic that the DEC has the boat launch. I went over there and checked it out and was really happy to see so many people using it. People were stopping in while I was there. That means that my agency is here already with our operations people and our fish and wildlife people. So that's great. Maybe we can bring the program that I work with to help also within the village. I'd really like that. I'm going to find out more about the people that I work with that I don't know about that are working here now that help with that boat launch. That's where we are. Even though it's a little fuzzy, I just wanted to see the picture and put it up so that I have an idea of the correlation to the Northway and just how dense it is in the village area, and then more open around the edges of it and around the lake itself. This picture is on your website. I grabbed it. I don't usually give credits, but it's a fantastic picture. And what struck me is somewhere in there, there's some buildings, but all I can see with my eyes are just trees everywhere. They built buildings. They've got what looks like some kind of roads, passageways in there, but they went out of their way to keep every one of those trees. And no matter how old that picture is, those trees, some of them are 100 years older than when the picture was taken. So it's pretty amazing that they went out of their way to keep all those trees, and it's fantastic. I'm sure there's still groves like that in many areas, but it's wonderful that that's here and it's special. And hopefully parts of it are still here and can be enhanced. This happens in a lot of places I go. I have to figure out where you are in the chain of government. We could start federal and work our way down, but village inside of a town, inside of a county, inside of a state, to me, while that says there's a lot of bureaucratic stuff, however, that also means that there are partners available at all levels. I'm sure that the village and the town are already using the county for help with planning and GIS work and other types of things, even engineer work. The state is available. When you're talking about Route 9, we're talking about the boat launch, my program. So there are partners, even though it's very bureaucratic. Some of us do actually help every once in a while. It's not that line about them from the government, I'm here to help. Usually I get a little laughter out of that, not much. So you have a tree committee. And from what I can see, it has a pretty good charge to it. It's supposed to be helping to maintain and preserve the tree stock in the village, and also work with New York State. Gets funding for tree inventory and a maintenance plan. So that's a really nice summary, nice short, concise summary of the tree committee. When that tree committee is up and running and working very well, they'll be able to work with our program to work on getting this funding. It also means that your clerk will be very busy doing government paperwork once we get because if any of you have heard of the Grants Gateway from New York State, it's one of the most amazing bureaucratic things they've ever created. It's no longer paperwork, everything's digital. However, it has streamlined our grants program, and it does make it accessible to a lot more people than it used to, but it's very demanding. It does take a lot of work, but the tree committee, the people that are on it, the folks that are on it, can work on that in coordination with our relief committee and really hopefully help get some funding for the village. One of the things that I was asked about is the parking issues and how parking can affect trees, and if tree removals have to be done, are there alternatives, or are there ways to make up for the removals? So I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but since it was asked, I want to put a few thoughts in here about it. First thing that everybody needs to make sure you understand a few definitions. In New York State, parkland has a very definite meaning to it, and it's held up in court for over 150 years worth of challenges that when something is marked and called parkland, it is parkland.
And the only way that gets changed is through a vote. So every once in a while, you may recall your annual election day in November, there may be one thing in there for you to vote on. A few years ago, I think it was in Racket Lake inside the preserve that they wanted to exchange acreages. But it was parkland and it had to be voted on by the people. So if the reason for that is in case you have a park and all of a sudden your village board says, well, gee, we need a parking lot, so let's just cut down the playground and pave it and use it as a parking lot. That can't be done. Parkland is parkland. That's parkland alienation. There's a whole set of laws that back that up and support it. So that's what that paragraph there says, parkland alienation. But it's a very important topic so that you understand that lands that are parklands in any way do have protection. Are there alternatives for the problems about parking? Again, I'm just kind of hit and miss here with ideas that I've discussed with other people, but if you have vacant lots or if there's seasonal usage of open spaces, sometimes that is a way around. Eminent domain would be my last choice. I don't even like putting it on there because it's such a nightmare and would take years for any process like that to work. But if parking is a real problem, I think it's going to involve probably an engineer as well to help. And one other significant issue, we're talking about parking, is the actual legal definition of the roads that are involved. Are they roads by prescription, roads by use? Are they mapped? Do they have rights of way attached to them, or are they simply just the road bed? Those are all things that an engineer and a lawyer have to know before you get into making changes to the existing issues. Because if it doesn't have a right of way, then your responsibility is the edges of pavement. But if you have a right of way, you have more room to work with. I noticed you have an awful lot of narrow streets, and I was curious about what do you do with all the snow? I was also curious when you're paving, repaving, which I saw some of that going on. Is there ever discussion about adding sidewalks, or is it just because everything is so narrow that that doesn't work and couldn't work? My concern on that is when you start doing all the construction, it can really affect the trees. Whether you have to remove trees, or you're cutting roots, things like that. And of course, there's always power poles if you're really doing work on trees and sidewalks that may have to be moved. Then we get into, Stuart and I discussed this once before, and something we like to try to encourage all communities to consider is if you're going to have tree protection laws in your community, that's what they are, they're community-based laws. Tree protection laws don't come from the state or the county or the federal level. We have programs, we have a big tree program, all kinds of things like that, but the laws are local laws. So if you're looking to preserve the trees that you have and create ordinances about species to be planted, when things can be pruned, where things can be planted, what can be done when a tree needs to be removed to make up for that removal, those are your laws to create. I looked through and I was wondering if you did have any laws. I found a few things in here that definitely talk about street trees, green spaces. I would think that moving forward, they would probably need to be modified, adjusted to get more tree protection language in there, but there are words about trees in your laws, which is good. It also defers to the engineer and the planning board in some cases as to the final decision makers, but within the laws doesn't really say what criteria they use to make their decisions. So that might also be something to be discussed. Again, this is just another one, but talks about no tree with a diameter of so many inches, and then further on talks about the planning board and the engineer. So you've got laws on the books. Again, they could be adjusted, new ones could be written if you were looking to enhance and improve tree protection laws for the community. All right, and then as far as ordinances and creating them, we're actually talking about changing local laws tonight. So the idea you're familiar with, one of our partners, the Arbor Day Foundation, has unbelievable resources. One of the resources that they have is actually sample ordinances online. You can go and grab one of their ordinances, change a few words, and it's pretty much a solid document that's used across the nation by many communities. So we encourage people to look at that. Where was I? And then as far as creating the laws, I heard somebody mention earlier about, who can enforce these things or who enforces laws. I wouldn't want to have any law on the books that you don't understand and that you're not able to enforce, because just creating the law and then not being able to enforce it, it doesn't work. It's not worth the effort. but what are you really protecting? Is your goal to protect the existing trees, to add more trees? Is it to protect your views, the view sheds, or is it all of those things in combination? So a discussion, your tree committee could work on that as well. And certainly get an arborist involved or a forester that can give some guidance, or even a landscape architect that can offer services and ideas. And then when we talk about the damage to trees, one of the reasons we want to protect trees, you can always see the trees that have been damaged when a truck prunes the trees going down the street, or the snowplow wings them. That happens. But what you might not see is all the roots getting crushed when people are parking on top of the roots, or you might not see that the roots got cut off during a construction project. And one of the things that's amazing about that is that 2 years after construction, where there's Norway maple trees, all the Norway maple trees seem to die. It's a well-known thing. They can't have their roots disturbed. If their roots get cut, they will die. And it happens time and time again, and people call us, oh my gosh, we've got some problem with our Norway maples. And you ask them if they got new sidewalks, and they say, yes. There you go. Roots got cut, 40, 50, 60-year-old tree gives up, just doesn't tolerate it. So that's not obvious. You can't see it, but a tree protection law might create a cage around that tree during construction, or not allow deep digging, or force the sidewalks to be adjusted where they're laid out to go around the trees instead of right next to them. New York City actually created a tree restitution law several years ago, and it's scared every contractor that works with New York City, and it's an incredible thing for them. But for every inch of diameter of a tree that's removed, an inch of tree must be replaced. So if you cut down a 30-inch tree, that means you could plant 31-inch trees. That is now built into contracts on city property. Adds a lot of expense, but it also adds a lot of trees. So if a tree has to be cut down for some reason, sewer project, construction project, they must replace an equal amount of diameter. Doesn't always have to be on the same site either. You should have a management plan for what you own. It's a resource. And the best way to get a management plan done is to get an inventory done, and you need money to do that. So either through our grants or through your own money. You've got funds here, or if you've got tower money that's coming off of easements. But our grants are very successful. We've got several of them out, usually about 60 every round across the state. I'm administering 4 or 5 right now in the region. They run anywhere from $5,000 to $75,000 to help communities get work done. So they're quite nice. But you know what you own. So that's the inventory. And then once you know what you own, you need a plan on how to manage it. Otherwise, you're kind of playing catch up all the time and sending the DPW guys to get trees out of the way when they break and fall. So that's, and then just a few things here. I don't know what slide number I'm on, but I'm sure I'm pretty close to the end. That's emerald ash borer for scale. That's emerald ash borer. It's about the size of a grain of rice. It's in the community. It's in Saratoga County. It's just found in Assembly Point. It's found in Warren County. It's around. It's making its way through the region now. It will kill every ash tree in North America, and that's what it's doing. It's just destroying all of them, killing all of them. You have to be prepared for that. You've got to get ready for that, because those trees don't stay standing once they've been killed. It takes 2 years to kill them and 2 years for the tree to fall apart. And the reason I do that is because you can read all that math if you want, but I had to do an example for a community, and this is what I did. It was just trying to create a dollar value for what they might anticipate as a worst case scenario for their tree removals. It's a horrible number for them. I forgot, we came in at, $11 million worth of removals in a community not too far from here. And these are really conservative numbers. I've dialed them down as much as I can. But if 7% of the trees out there are ash, and you're gonna have to remove all those trees at $500 to $1,000 a piece along the streets, that adds up fast. You gotta find a way to get ready for that, because it is here. It's just around the corner. This is right around the corner, another community, but one of our grants is actually gonna work to help them with this. Their trees haven't been cared for in many years. Just on this one corner, I put those little acorns there because it's fun to do, but there's like 5 things right there that need to be adjusted, taken care of. Tree rubbing on a building, tree in the way of the sidewalk, tree in the way of the street, tree blocking the signs, tree blocking the fire hydrant, tree that was really poorly pruned up on top. It's gonna lead to further growth and crazy growth on that tree. The inventory was just done. The management plan will come out and tell them that that needs to be pruned. they'll apply for the next grant. They'll get money to go towards pruning. So that's how that process works. That was Saratoga this spring, did a tree planting right in front of the city hall. Fantastic project. It was an Arbor Day event. They're a tree city. That was a real great thing to do. I just like this tree. This one's amazing to me. It's a beech tree. Hard to see, but in the bottom, people where this tree is, where this tree lives, the people like it so much, they put lights on it, so that it lights up at night. So people that go by and get to see it. It's an amazing thing, and it's survived all kinds of beach problems over the years. Normally beach bark disease would have killed that anywhere else, but that one has managed to go on. That's right in Glens Falls. They did a fantastic job. Increased the size of the tree pits, planted a tree that will do well there, but they don't have a plan on how to maintain these, and already this tree is in traffic and blocking the sidewalk, and it's only a few years old. So again, a management plan, which they're working on right now with Davey. We'll talk to them about how to care for this tree. You guys need to become a tree city. Get the flag out front, get the sign out front, get the tree committee to work on that. It's a fun thing to do. You can do the Arbor Day events, the proclamation from the mayor. And, oops, you're gonna do an Arbor Day event. I like those. I try to come. So let me know if you're gonna do one. I think they're fun. And that is just another fun picture. It's hard to see, but that's a bald eagle on top of a basswood tree. That eagle landed in that tree just as we were setting up a whole bunch of tables to do a Eagle Scout project one day on one of our properties. I just thought it was a really cool thing. It was fall. It was really neat. That was the only thing out there. And that guy landed there to watch an Eagle Scout project. So I thought that was pretty amazing. I think that's everything that I had. I do have these insects on display in the back. That's the spotted lanternfly. That's the newest one. It's making the news. Showed you the emerald ash borer, the little guy. An Asian longhorn beetle's been in the news for about 25 years now in lower New York, Massachusetts, Ohio. But a lot of people think they have this one. And it's what you guys typically have is the pine sawyer. It's chewing on your pine trees in June and keeping people awake at night. This is an Asian longhorn beetle. Looks very similar, but really likes hardwood trees, especially maples.
Are these all non-native?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, don't worry, we give bad stuff away to other people. We've shared poison ivy and a lot of our bad stuff around the world, you know, with the economy that can move things in 24 hours, 48 hours or less. You know, you see those container ships out there now sitting, you don't know what's in there. You don't know how many of these little guys and the eggs of these little guys are in there. You just don't. And that's how this happens. It can't be stopped the way we do business today. We work with it when it happens and we're getting good at working with it, but we can't predict it. That's the
How
problem.
prevalent is a spotted lanternfly in this area?
It's becoming more prevalent. It's made its way into lower New York. It's into the Binghamton area. We had a couple in Troy and Albany area that were dead, that were found on people's vehicles. But it seems to be spreading. It loves ailanthus trees, which we're very happy about because we don't like ailanthus trees. But the biggest problem with these guys is a public nuisance. They poo by the gallon, and they make mountains of poo when they're in the trees. That turns moldy, mildewy, draws ants, draws other insects to it. And I was telling Gary earlier, when we were talking to people in Pennsylvania, when this was first found, people were saying they did not want to go outside because it was raining poo. It was that disgusting. On top of it, they like grapes. So they're really getting into the grape growers' nightmares and causing a lot of trouble. So they are spending a lot of time and money on it, but everybody likes the coloration of it and all that, but another problem. So I can do questions or you can cut me off or I can just give up.
Just a question. So the department's website would have advice on types of trees you could plant in an area like ours. Would it also have, for example, we lost a couple of spruces over the last few years with disease.
Right.
Would the department also have on information about what's currently eating away?
Yeah, a couple things about that. Our Forest Health Lab out of Delmar has a fantastic website, and they love questions and pictures and text message questions, pictures. They love all that. They respond instantly. So if you have something you're not sure, take the picture, send it to them, they respond. They try to continually update our forest health page because things are changing all the time with these insects and the regulations that go with them. So I can't tell you exactly where we are with it. And as far as species to plant in a certain area, yes, we have guides for that. And they have suggestions for it. And actually, one of the best guides when you're talking about street trees to this day is still New York City's production from their website, from their parks site. It's fantastic. Heights, diameter, power line issues, all that. They identify which trees to plant where. It pretty well correlates to here. But again, I can help with that too. Yeah, put it back.
Gary, can you forward that presentation for the rest of the board also?
Mhm.
Thank you.
You mentioned that a lot of grants available, through your portfolio, whether it's through.
Right.
If we have a committee that we form here, we get a committee, Harvard committee.
Yeah.
Are we responsible for grant writing for this, or is this something?
I guess that's the answer right there.
It's doable.
It's,
doable?
it's, the idea of
It's
grant writing.
it's cumbersome, but
Yeah, the idea of grant writing is not necessarily what it is anymore. It used to be you hired a grant writer and they wrote wonderful stories, lots of pictures. That's not it. You go to the New York State Grants Gateway page and you answer 1,000 questions and upload 100 documents and you do everything perfectly correctly. And then you send it in and it gets reviewed. We try to help you through that whole process. But there's no more grant writing where you've got to write flowing stories and try to be better than everybody else. It's competitive, but the website, if you answer the questions that are asked, you will get funded. We fund 50% of the applications that come in every round.
Gary, you say that the budget for tree removal increased this year, maybe that.
for,
Tree removal, isn't it the budget for tree removal increase?
yeah, specifically for all the dead ash trees that we have.
So it kind of, like you were saying, it doesn't.
It does affect community budgets because there's no funding for it from the state or federal or county levels to help with emerald ash borer. There were with other issues. There is with hemlock woolly adelgid, there was with Asian longhorn beetle. $40 million a year in Asian longhorn beetle. There's no money in emerald ash borer, and it's a worse problem. It's just how the budget's worth. You got to get ready for it. It's an overwhelming nightmare when those trees start dying and the branches just start blowing off everywhere. And if you travel outside of here, anywhere from Albany, New York, or over to Buffalo, all you gotta do is drive the thruway in any direction, and it's all standing dead ash trees along the sides of the thruway. It's just every ash tree is dead, and that's the way it's gonna be.
Yeah, beech blight, you've got hemlock,
Hemlock woolly adelgid, yep.
which I can't pronounce. And, you know, you have problems with elms and
Yep.
chestnuts and pines and beeches and so forth. It's hard to think of what's left. If we wanted to pick a couple of hardwoods and a couple of softwoods that really aren't under attack now, like lights and rushes
Right.
and so forth, what can we plant?
I'll answer that in 1 second by giving you some information first. We no longer encourage that picture that I showed of the London plains down the side of the street. We no longer encourage monoculture plantings. Every tree the same. Looks wonderful when you have the American elm line streets or the American chestnuts, so on and so forth. Or in the case of the American elms, they were replaced with ash trees, which are dying. And if you have all the same species and then you get a blight, you lose all those trees at once. So if you're planting a diversity of species, it gives you a chance to manage them in and out. So that's the first thing, is that there's problems with all of the trees, one way or the other. And some years are worse than others. This past year, I don't know if you guys got hit with gypsy moth, but the communities that got hit with it, it was bad. Where I live near Clintonsbury, it was devastating. We had no leaves. It looked like December all summer. The leaves didn't come back until going into September, and it was just leaf parts and poop everywhere all the time. That comes every 20 years. Oak trees get hurt by it. Hopefully they get through it. As far as which trees to plant now, we still have a long list. You know, the Saratoga nursery is right around the corner. They produce over 1 million seedlings a year that go out to the public, and then the state
Hard
parks.
maple, soft maple,
Both of those are very acceptable trees to be planting. Again, the London plane is a fantastic maple tree to plant. Sycamores are fantastic. There's a variety of elm trees that are resistant now. The American chestnut is coming back in the next year or so. So that'll get reintroduced. That'll be a fun one to get back out. Public hasn't seen it in over 100 years. Except for the people that have them sprouting up in their stone walls or up in their fields. But I can give you a list of 15 to 20 trees easily that are acceptable and doing well.
I'd like to
Yeah, I'll give you- if I didn't give you my card, I'll just take the one I gave Gary and give it to you. Since you have everything already.
And a last one, we had a oil mist delivery in the basement here at South Park. And in the year after that happened, and for the decade, 15 years since, trees lining Peck Avenue, nice old mature trees died one after another. So there's some oil still left underground. What trees can live with a little bit of oil?
Not being a chemist, but my first answer is none, because they're breathing in the ground and they're also drawing water through the ground, and oil is going to stop both of those things from happening. There are trees that are used specifically to help with heavy metals, landfill work, trees that will filter bad stuff out of the ground, but as far as oil, I'm not aware of anything. That's typically a soil remediation project, soil removal and replacement project, not working with the soil that's contaminated, capping it if you're never going to use it again, that site.
The barn door is open and the oil's in the ground.
Yep, so that would probably be, removing some soil, adding some topsoil, planting shrubs and trees that are shallow rooted that could do well, not hitting the oil layer. That oil has got a long way to go to get down and spread out so that it's no longer a super contaminant.
Like
That's
pine?
unfortunate. Like pine? No, not that I'm aware of, not for that. Unfortunately. All right, did I do it?
Any other questions?
Just wanted to-
How many in touch with you?
Best thing is through Gary and Stuart as well.
Stuart, Kim.
Steph and Kim, they all have my contact information. Stuart, I didn't mention, is on our regional relief committee. So he joined that and has been working with us, and that's probably partly or mostly why I'm here tonight. So thank you. If people have other questions, just send them along to Gary, Kim, Stuart, or just my contact information is in the PowerPoint, which is going to get posted, I think. So it'll be there as well.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
1:15. I love that. Absolutely. If I can get out of a classroom and get outdoors.
Next, we are moving on to public comment. Sure. Public comment, anybody here before I look at Lydia?
I see it on the agenda, so probably I'm not the only one who's concerned about the events in the auditorium this weekend. And I had three main issues that concern me. One was how it didn't constitute an infringement on copyright. Two, whether permission was given by the village government, either express or implied. And three, whether the auditorium policy for use of the auditorium is followed. So I'm hoping you'll answer this.
Any other public comment? As you mentioned, that is on the agenda later. Superintendent report.
Yes. Well, we're paving the roads and done. I think it went out pretty well. We're in the process of putting shoulders on the road. About 3/4 of the way to that. We're just finishing up our early halfway through days after. New salter that we ordered a while back and checked out, which will be in the when it was a truck that ordered a while back, just a half a year or so ago. Is now in Indiana, which is 19 box. So hopefully we'll see that sometime in the next month or so. Also, with the work of Gary and getting prices, a new snowblower that we have, 12 years old. So I got the prices. The snowblower is $33,000. $33,044.10. That's with the trade-in on our mower, snowblower, which is a $8,250. That's not bad. There's an option on there to get a new 17-inch mower head. And I didn't know if you wanted that or just hold off on that. We were due for this mower a couple of years. And I believe the mower that we have on our mower head, we probably would like one with that mower since we turned it in. So it just was on there. So I, asked for it. And so I would add that out with so I'm hoping if we order that machine now, we would get it sometime in August of next year. So, the other years, so we have
I don't guarantee you the price of the trade-in is the price once you lock in the contract, even though it's still using the
Yeah,
snowblower,
I asked you that. Now we lock it in.
even if it shows up.
The snowblower we have, it's gotta be, we got pictures, it's gotta go down in similar shape.
Gotcha, okay.
Which is fine, I mean, we're,
It'll be okay for another season though.
yeah, I mean, we pretty sure then we replace it, we better lay out and replace it, so that's.
We got two mowers.
We have two mowers, yeah, this is the snow blower.
Right, but this is snow blower, so you have capacity, effectively have three, at least until one of the old ones.
Is that right?
If you order the mower, deck, you have three mowers.
You have the capability of
Got it.
that snow blower, when we get that, I can't see put that out anywhere, it's gonna have to add and something, we're going to take a chance of having that. Clip from the branch or something, waiting out $2,000 worth of damage.
So it's unlikely we'd ever use it as a stuff mower.
Yeah. So we shouldn't.
So why bother?
You're to the lower deck.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was an option just to have.
Okay.
I mean, it was on there, it's like this. Yesterday, like, oh, what's that? Just hang it. So it's like 33,
Yeah.
$33,044.10.
Including,
Including the trade, which is $8,250.
How long have we had that for? Since the sidewalks.
Well, no, the mower was actually a lawnmower. To a snow blower. And purchased a new mower, we converted our old one. So it's fell out. And I figured if you get the new snow blower, you don't put it in the parks and use it strictly for snow blower, it's gonna last as good as the long term. So I think we know if they, now lock that into it.
This would be from UFB. Fund balance. I think that part of the truck was from that.
We have to do all of this from fund balance. Or don't we have any capital?
We were using some of that for the truck, I think half for the truck and half from fund balance. And oh, that's right. Will it be in two budget? No, it should be in, I would imagine in this budget here.
but we're not gonna get it till next year.
Right.
So we won't pay for it till next August at the earliest. So we need to take a little out of and reserve it out of this budget year, and next budget year, take the rest of it.
You know what the deposit is, John?
No, I do not. Deposit, I don't think there is a deposit. Just
Okay.
intent to purchase.
Okay. So we can work on that in the next budget.
Yeah.
Just factor that in.
Unless you want to take something out and put it in, set it aside.
Typically, we can hear the test will send something down, the letterhead, we tend to send that gets the ball rolling, then the machine gets here. We get paid.
Should we move something in with that? Or we put it aside. So
Into
capital, we have a capital equipment reserve,
DPW
right?
reserve.
Yeah, I mean, it would make sense maybe to transfer some from the UFB to that so that we have money set aside for in the next budget year.
At least some of it.
Yeah, at least part of it, maybe half of it, 20,000 or 20,000.
I would say all of it.
Okay,
It's something that one of the most useful pieces of equipment in the winter, and would hate to see
Yeah.
any problems with that.
You don't need a resolution.
Yeah.
That's.
yeah,
I'll
yeah,
second.
30, let's say 35,000. So we get a nice amount of-
Yeah. Yeah, up just in case, authorize.
Well, we're
Oh,
transferring a
that's true.
specific number of money, specific amount of money, so it doesn't hurt to have a couple thousand extra in there. I'm assuming, right? So I'll make a motion to transfer $35,000 from the unfree balance to the capital equipment reserve fund.
Second.
Discussion?
The other thing was this was also.
Hang on, we gotta get both. Oh,
Yeah, yes.
yes.
Oh, I was a striking in the parking lot, so. I met the gentleman at Strike Victoria Landings, he was supposed to meet with me today. Just no show, I had one guy left, and that was, someone that I know, and that's the reason why I never went, and we didn't get a price, because I do know him. But I'm hoping this guy up here will get a hold of us tomorrow. And he's gonna do today, so I don't think I'm not working on it for some reason. People just aren't coming back.
Well, it's kind of a small job, so it's hard getting people to bid at small jobs. Small-ish. But if he doesn't get back to you tomorrow, go with Derek, see what kind of price. He give us.
That's really about it. I mean, we'll be working on the shoulders and those history of next couple of weeks.
And what he means by that is the shoulder, some of the roads, when you pave it, it's up. The new pavement is up a little kind of high, so they put some, what is it, they put the
Well,
crushed stone, rubble to ease the transition between.
particularly early in the
Per-
day.
early.
we need to know those roads down, because you wanna try to do it on
Veterans Committee, there will be a Veterans Day celebration, and information will be coming out shortly about that. Treasurer.
I emailed everyone to file that. I expect next month that the report that you guys get every month will look a little bit different. I've been going through training, the company that bought out our software has, bought out the company that we go through for IT. We've been in line to migrate over to their software for maybe 2 years or so, and we're finally starting the process. So we've been in training, and hopefully by the end of the month, we're live with that new software. So, but it looks good so far. I like it. It has more options, which is good. There are 2 resolutions that I need. The first one is the village has received a settlement from selective insurance in the amount of $5,474.86 for water damage to the office. Resolution is requested to increase revenue account A 2680 insurance recovery
And also increase expense account A 1620.42 building maintenance, both by $5,474.86 to account for the unexpected insurance recovery and office.
You want to do that now? I'll make that a resolution. To increase revenue account A2680. Increase expense in A16202, maintenance, both by the amount of check, which is $5,474.86.
Second? Discussion? Vote?
Yes.
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 Second one, the fire department has received 2 dividend checks from Utica National Insurance totaling $5,593.35. Resolution is requested to deposit and restrict $5,593.35 in the fire department equipment reserve on account A 230.1 and A 8.
Just clarification, what does restrict mean?
Sure, restrict, it's going into the reserve, so
Okay, that's
the
what I thought.
entry, yep, the entry rate there is going to show that it's.
It can only be used for that.
Right.
Got it. Thank you. I'll make that resolution.
Second?
Second.
Discussion?
Yes.
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 And that's other than the abstract. The abstract looks big this month, but it does have the fire trucks payment in there and there's some other big.
That's these ones, right? I have 2 questions. I don't think it's gonna change the amounts. But maybe we're done. Don't answer those questions.
We can do that. I can answer them now.
This one, the attachments had 10,000, and then the paperwork is for 56.75. So I'm not sure where the difference is.
Oh, I see. There was a deposit put down for 5,000.
And it's just not collected in there.
No, it's not. I'm sorry, right.
Okay, but I didn't think it was gonna change it, but.
Wait, one more.
This one. The amount's different, but it's because. I'm assuming that's why, but do we have to tell them? Otherwise, they're just gonna carry this over again and again.
The tax. I'm not sure. Lowe's is usually pretty good about it. A lot of times with Lowe's, John actually puts that on. But
I'm just saying, if we pay the lesser amount, they're just gonna carry that over again and again and again.
I see. I did put
Credit card.
the tax on there, so.
That's correct.
And that's okay. I can, that'll come over on the next one. And then I can do that on the next one. We actually have no payment due at the moment, because we're a month ahead, so.
Okay.
we didn't get any fees on it. That's-
Yeah, like I said, I didn't think it was gonna change the amount.
All righty, Chief Auditorium AT3 events.
We had a fundraiser in September, it seemed to be enjoyed by all those who attended. We get the very last account of them and should have raised over $5,000. So all that awesome.
Wow. Exceeded your expectations, Lydia?
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't have expectations, I just had.
It's a a good way to live life. No expectations.
Is that it? Lydia?
Yeah.
Lydia, is
Sorry,
there any more?
no, just thank you to everyone who helped with that. It's a lot of.
Okay, and Kim has the chief's report. He's on vacation.
Chief says that last month they had 50 calls, still up about 15% over last year. He said the boat is still running behind and hopefully have before the winter. And he also noted that there'll be a truck in the village for Halloween and we'll coordinate a spot with worship with them. He's back next week.
I should point out that the other day, 2 people were in the water, overturned sailboat, the Stillwater sheriff's, state police, rounded fire department. Everybody got there. We were down there. They apparently were in no real danger. The life vest on current was blowing so strong. The field was by fishing. But these guys are down here pretty fast. They had everything. We're pretty confident that they were doing. Things got worse. So good job to them.
And any more for? Okay. What were you pointing to? Yeah, code enforcement officer.
We paid, we had Victoria Landing received its final payment. I've had ongoing meetings with the residents of Victoria Landing as we approach. Probably by the end of the year, this will be sold and occupied. So Amador is looking to pull out. So we're going over numerous issues that we're working with Amador to get completed.
That's it? Okay. Mr. Clayton,
No tickets, no animal control calls.
nice. And moving on to old business, RB1 committee update.
No report. Peter and Tom and I are going to get together probably next week. Everybody's been a little busy with one thing or another, so we've been unable to find a good date, but I think next week's going to be open. So we'll have something that workshop. Verbal.
And Victorian Landing Road dedication resolution, we don't need that. Is that my rec?
We passed it, we enacted it, I believe it has all the language necessary
So
to allow us to get on the CHIPS list.
now the mileage, was that,
That's in the resolution,
that is in the resolution. Okay.
I think total of 0.41.
0.4, okay. So how do we get that to chips?
I do not know.
Well, we'll figure it out.
Yes,
Not a huge amount extra, but something. Okay, under new business, we had a community room use request, which we agreed to via email. For trivia sometime in November. But I would like to read the first sentence of the community room use policy and ask you to keep it in mind for the next topic on the agenda. The Village of Round Lake permits the use of the community room for public village activities. Requests go to the village office for approval. It's very straightforward, no problems. Now, the next topic, auditorium policy violations. You have a copy of this in front of you, so you don't have to. As you know, the auditorium policy requires that we collect fees and insurance unless waived by the board. The phrase village event does not appear in the contract for the policy. Events are either public or private. A number of events have occurred over the last few months that have violated the auditorium policy in that the board did not waive the fees and insurance requirements. to be perfectly clear, I'm fine with all of these events, but the issue of policy violations has come up. So I would like to offer some suggestions to make sure that this situation does not occur again. To prevent similar situations in the future, here's what I propose. Number one, I'll appoint myself interim auditorium director so that there's a clear line of responsibility. Two, I would suggest adding the following to our auditorium policy, the following line, taken directly from our community room policy. The Village of Round Lake permits the use of the auditorium for public village activities. It just has to be approved by, for the auditorium use, I would add with permission of the clerk, liaison, manager, mayor, whatever the board wishes. And the third thing is to change the lock on the auditorium and more strictly control distribution of keys. And Lydia's comment about copyright violation. I'm reading from the motion picture licensing company. Here it is. No. Any place where a substantial number of persons outside of a normal circle of a family and its social acquaintances is gathered, such as clubs, lodges, factories, summer camps, and schools, requires a public performance license. I would say that the event Saturday, which you referenced, clearly falls in this. There were at least 8 or 9 members of one family and their acquaintances. And I'm just, it's-
It wasn't 68 people. but I
stop,
think it
stop, ladies and gentlemen.
was-
So I am confident that that is not a violation. And furthermore, in the past, there have been many movies shown in the auditorium, and if we want to investigate that, fine, investigate away. But I'm proposing a way to, oh, and also the $390 that was collected at Saturday's event is going to go towards licensing so that we can address any concerns about that. Because I suspect there's a lot of interest in having movies in the auditorium. So to avoid any confusion or agita, we will get the proper licensing.
I like the idea personally.
No, you go.
Okay, I'm just gonna add my sense in terms of your idea about changing the locks on the auditorium and strictly controlling the distribution of keys. I think it's a great idea. I think we should incorporate into the village, into the auditorium policy, who specifically gets access to the keys to the auditorium. So I think it should be specific people, not necessarily just a blanket will control who it is. I think we should name who those people are in the policy.
When I first heard about this, I guess I went on rails. I was under the impression that permission was given to a group of people, and I probably should just add, I have no idea who was there. They're absolutely clueless. I don't know how many and who, so if you feel guilty, it's on you. It's not me. I was under the impression that we needed to have, as per our policy, a rental agreement, and it had to be contracts signed by the mayor and the clerk, and there was a fee that had to be paid, and you're supposed to have a non-refundable deposit, and you're supposed to have insurance liability coverage, et cetera, et cetera. And I was under the impression that permission was given and none of these things occurred for the policy. Well, I guess I was stunned to hear that no permission was given. No one, at least officially, gave their blessing to this event. So now we don't have just an issue of a violation of the rental policy. We have people walking around with keys to the auditorium that are using them when they want to, for whatever reason they want to. And in my opinion, that's trespass. At the very least. And I agree with Gary's solutions here. People, we should change those locks as soon as possible. Have a minimum number of keys available. Assign them to somebody. And have a sign in, sign out sheet. You don't carry the key to your auditorium around with you while you're up at Stewart's or you're on vacation. It's in the office. And there should be a place that somebody signs in such and such a date, who, for what purpose, and brings the key back when the event's over. As for the other part of this, I don't know what you do about people who trespass without permission on village property. What could have happened in there? If something serious happened, somebody got hurt. I don't know if alcohol was consumed in there. We have a policy against that unless they come up with the licensing for it. I can't imagine that people were just in there doing whatever they were doing, showing a movie. I don't know. Could you imagine if a fire started after they left, or somebody left the door open by mistake, and you had kids in there 3 or 4 in the morning, or somebody fell off the stage, half in bed? I mean, what kind of liability would we be stuck with? And I think it's a serious transgression. I don't know if the people are willing to identify themselves. I don't know that they would. I don't know that I would. But I think a letter should be written to some of the known individuals who participated in that, from the attorney, warning them of the consequences for that kind of behavior in the future. It should not happen. And people have keys to that place. It's on us that they have them, but they should be confiscated immediately and lodged. When this escalated beyond the rental policy, I was flabbergasted. Never in 20-something years I've been on board have I ever heard of anything. But anyway, I'm with you, Gary, on the locks. And I'd be happy to make a motion, or I don't think we have to, if we want to accept your.
I have to say that as well before.
Yes.
we make a motion. When is Adrian's contract up? We have an auditorium manager. We know how,
Basically now.
Now?
End of October.
end of October.
There's no events, just the band.
Okay, so she has been dealing with the band. So she is still working because she was dealing with the band. And we were not having any Halloween events in the auditorium. So the end of the season, it seemed, was the band. So she is still our auditorium manager and still working. I'm assuming, because I didn't hear anything about it. As auditorium liaison, I didn't hear anything about this. I wasn't invited to the event. I don't know who was there. I don't know how it happened. I have some hearsay. That's about it. But it doesn't sound like the auditorium manager was informed about it. The policy that you talk about. So when you say you're going to appoint you would like to appoint yourself the interim auditorium director. We have an auditorium manager. And we had a clear line of responsibility and it wasn't followed. The season is over, so we don't need anyone else in there because there are no more events in the building, is my understanding.
But there are events that are coming in that need to be,
What events are coming in?
well, we've got a wedding coming,
Now?
coming in. No, not now.
Okay, so
No,
I'm
I'm
talking about next year,
Yeah.
and we are in the process of looking for a new auditorium manager to figure out how the auditorium will be used. So there are a lot of things we want to talk about the auditorium, but the season is done, and I don't see why we need to appoint anyone
an auditorium manager. There's someone that does need to field phone calls. We need to field phone calls, and we need to start keeping a calendar. The auditorium, it's not an auditorium policy, it's an auditorium rental policy. It is about rental agreements between the village and the auditorium and how they handle it, because I wrote it. It talks about that the rental contracts will be signed by both the renter and the village mayor or the village clerk. So there's already responsibility to the village office for all contracts. It also says that the village board may waive or modify any or all of the rental policy on a case-by-case basis. So whenever we wanted to have events in the auditorium that were village events, or we didn't want to charge a rental fee, we didn't think it was appropriate, it was general community use was usually what we said. We waived that. We waived the fee. We've done that on a case-by-case basis before. The community room does not have a rental policy because we don't rent it. That's why we say clearly, village events here are, welcome. Doesn't mean that they're not welcome in the auditorium. It just means this is a policy for auditorium rental. So I don't think we need to change it in any way. We should be figuring out what's going on and how many keys there are and who's in and out of it and who,
So let me just interject something, make sure I understand. So let's stick with the idea. Let's say I want to show Casablanca at the auditorium. I would be expected to pay $250 or $2.25 and provide $1 million liability insurance.
No. What you would do is if you wanted to have a movie in the auditorium, first you would find out whether it's in the public domain or whether it needed to have rights. And we'd figure out if the village had a policy that covered that or not, or how you would pay for the rights if you felt strongly.
Assuming we have the rights.
Okay, assuming we had the rights, then someone would come to the village board and request to have an event there. And we would say, is it public or private? And we talk about what they're going to do there. If it's a private event and like we do with weddings or any other private event, we ask people to have $1 million liability policy, which doesn't take a lot. You can add it to your homeowner's policy for a very small amount of money. So people do that with weddings because we've done it before.
Are we positing that anyone in the village is invited to attend Casablanca?
Yes.
Well, that would make it a public village event, which is a different thing.
Not in terms of the policy, it's not. I mean, you still have, and my whole point for this was, and why I got so agitated that one particular event was being singled out, was that we didn't waive the fees for any of the, I had a list on the open mics and all sorts of things that we didn't waive specifically as the board, as required, waive the fees and the insurance requirement for.
What events are you talking about that are exceptions to the auditorium rental policy? Open mic night, which is a long-standing village event.
Yes, but
Right.
the policy, the rental policy doesn't say anything about long-standing village events.
No, it doesn't. It's a rental policy. It's not an auditorium policy, it's a rental policy. So it talks about whenever you want to rent the auditorium, this is how you do it. It doesn't talk about how we handle everything in the auditorium.
And that's my point.
Mhm.
So if a group of people want to watch a movie, say, again, assuming everything's legal, in the community room, it's okay, because we specifically say, whatever I just read, permits the use of the community room for public village activities. That's very clear cut for this room. But if you want to show it in the auditorium as a private or a public event, the policy, the rental policy says that you have to pay and have insurance unless waived by the board.
Right.
And we haven't specifically done that for, I don't think, any of the events that I'm aware of.
Because
Just
they
some,
weren't rental, they weren't rentals.
but you're using it.
If you would
without
like an
renting.
auditorium policy that has nothing to do with rentals, we can discuss that too.
Well, that's
But
basic.
there
That's
is a
what I'm getting.
longstanding agreement that there are some village events that our insurance policy covers because we discussed it with Dave Meager before. And it's like, okay, it's a village event, everybody's invited, it's a public use of a public part of the village.
I would like to see that in writing as added maybe a separate policy, like a
Yeah.
community room policy and an auditorium policy.
Did we not approve COVID guidelines for the auditorium earlier on this year? Did we not have a separate policy?
That was
regarding
added,
That's part of
there was a line
policy.
added to the rental policy saying COVID-19 and masking regulations.
Okay, so we did add regulations to the rental policy, which is, I guess, so, but I do agree that we should have now separate guidelines for auditorium use. I think should be a policy that we ought to adopt so that
For-
it makes that clear, because I think some people might have argued, although I think it's a little bit of a gray area, that this event was welcome to all, even though there was a specific list of people invited. I think some people would argue that anybody that showed up would have been welcome, in which case, how is it different than an open mic night? But I do think it's a bit of a gray area, and I do think there was no tacit, nobody knew about it.
Open mic nights are advertised on the village, on the
Right, I
auditorium
agree, I
website.
agree with you,
mean,
I
we
agree
all
with you.
knew.
I'm just saying that there was clearly, what I'm trying to say is that there was a little bit, I think there was a misunderstanding on the part of the people that were holding the event, that this was a sort of a village event, even if it was confined to a small number of village people, and I think we ought to clarify that by producing a policy that makes it very clear what events are allowed, what events are not allowed, what
Sure.
permissions are
But I don't
required.
know how a village event, I don't know how any event happens in the auditorium without
I-
the approval of the village
agree.
mayor,
I
the
agree.
village
I-
clerk, the auditorium manager,
100%
or
agree.
the auditorium liaison. None of this, I didn't hear that.
You can have all the round policies, guidelines you want. This thing happened on its own.
Yeah,
We have people who shouldn't have been in there. Were
I
not authorized to be in there.
agree with you, Tom, but I think we ought to draw a line in the sand and say, this is what we're gonna have to do. Make it very clear to people that going forward, we can't, I guess, undo what we can do, other than,
I
like,
understand.
to your point, if you know, if you wanna go to this extent of having the attorney draft a letter, I think, personally, I think we've kind of made our point clear.
I think I made my point, so,
Yeah,
I'd like to see at the very minimum, I don't know about the business with the manager. I kind of, that doesn't bother me at all. If Gary wants to take that on temporarily until we find somebody, that's fine with me. And revising the policy, but I definitely would like those locks changed as soon as possible. And a set of keys, a certain number of set of keys, and you guys figure out who should go, who should have a key or be authorized to use it.
Yeah.
And make them sign in and sign out and bring a key back as soon as whatever is reasonable in our office hours, and whether it's a Saturday or something. But I think at the minimum, it just knocks me out that people walk around with keys to this building and using it in such a manner. Imagine somebody falling off the stage. Can you imagine what we'd be talking about right now? Don't shake your head.
Tom, it's.
Not.
Be a little bit-
Hold, public comments coming up shortly.
Okay,
ladies and gentlemen.
back off on that.
Okay, I think we're kind of beating a dead horse
Yeah.
here, I think.
yeah, so I think personally, I would work with Heidi or whoever, I'll work in the next month, we can come up with some auditorium guidelines and.
Right, but I also think we're in the process of figuring out auditorium usage in general, and maybe we are between seasons, and maybe that could
That's
just
not a
be
bad idea.
a sum total. What we do need right now is someone to take phone calls and begin compiling a schedule or take contacts. Okay, so you're keeping a list and a calendar.
A calendar, we have a new calendar, I invited you to it.
Okay,
What I wanted to know is, are we changing any rental fees? So that's something to talk about. Because I haven't quoted any prices for, there's 3 weddings. I haven't quoted any prices. I haven't had
Well,
prices.
can you tell people that these are the fees for this year, so this was in the neighborhood, and we are not, because we have a lot to figure out with the auditorium. That's not the least of which who's gonna manage it, and how we're gonna handle that.
In terms of the lock change, though.
I think that the locks have been changed a couple times in the auditorium because keys get around, and I think it's time. And a sign in and a sign out sheet would be good.
Thomas.
Would you like me to take a stab at amending at least the procedural and logistical portions of the policy for the auditorium to take into account the different uses, contract versus public event? And it might be easy to make it easier to go through and make the policy determinations that the board wants to make.
Sure.
I can circulate that and we can plug in the blanks at the next meeting.
It may take longer than
Yeah.
until next meeting.
So do you need a motion on the lots?
No.
Or do we?
No.
No. Okay.
For those who may not know, November 3rd is a village board workshop meeting on the auditorium.
Over time.
Worked out well.
And next, correspondence? None. Approval of minutes?
We have to pass a local law for-
Parking.
Oh, sorry. Missed it.
You had read the law earlier. on,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And we had public hearings.
So I'll make a motion to approve local law number 4/2021.
Four.
Second.
As read by Gary.
Second.
Discussion?
Yes.
What is the local law?
You're amending chapter 168 with regard to on-street parking and directing signs.
Oh, yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
So our parking law is number 4.
For
yes.
And approval of minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes. October 6th.
we do September 5th.
Oh, this is September. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I'll probably go with September 15th.
Discussion?
Yes.
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 Then there's October 6th.
Yeah, it's public hearing workshop.
I just have one correction to make. I was not present at that meeting.
Yeah.
We have to do this tonight.
So there's only 3 of us, Gary, 4 of us. Tina.
I got here by that time, so
So she was technically here.
she was here in the beginning.
This went on for 9 minutes after.
So make the motion.
Make the motion to accept the minutes of October 6th.
Second. Discussion?
Yes.
Abstain.
Approval of abstract.
Make a motion to approve the abstract, in the amount of $279,193.77.
Second.
Discussion?
Yes.
Yes. So Tom, for this, we are just setting a public hearing.
Yes, we're setting a public hearing for a local law, changing the dates on which certain taxes are due and the rate at which the taxes, water rents and sewer rents increase, that is with interest, each month. This is to enable us to get any re-levies to the county a month before they're due now. Is that accurate? Yes.
All right, so I read this, huh? Okay, resolution to schedule a public hearing to amend Article 2 of Chapter 162, Village Tax Bills, Water Rents and Sewer Rents. Whereas the Village Board of the Village of Round Lake proposes to amend Article 2 of Chapter 162 to revise dates for the payment of taxes and rents, interest for late payments and turnover of unpaid taxes and rents to Saratoga County for relevy. And whereas copies of the proposed legislation have been provided to the mayor and all trustees, and a copy made available for public review in the village office, now therefore be it resolved, the Board of Trustees of the Village of Round Lake finds and determines that the proposed article is a type 2 action under the seeker law and is not subject to review under that law. And it is further resolved that the village clerk is directed to post the proposed legislation on the village's website. And it is further resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Round Lake will hold a public hearing pertaining to the proposed amendment of Article 2 of Chapter 162 of the Code of the Village of Round Lake to revise dates for the payment of taxes and rents, interest for late payments, and turnover of unpaid taxes and rents to Saratoga County for relevy on the 17th day of November 2021 at 6:45 p.m. at the Village Hall of the Village of Round Lake, 49 Burlington Ave, Round Lake, New York, at which time and place all persons desiring to be heard thereon will be heard. And it is lastly resolved that the village clerk of the Village of Round Lake be and she hereby is directed to publish notification of said public hearing as required by law. Do I have a second? Second?
Tina.
Oh, okay. Discussion?
Yes.
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 Yes. So did the abstract. Village attorney, words of wisdom.
No, I have talked enough.
Village mayor, yesterday, I met with Oneonta professor and a grad student doing her grad thesis on Round Lake. And she's been sampling it, and she's in the Oneonta's Lake Management Program. So I've met with her a couple times, and she's starting to write up her thesis, and she should have draft results for ready for looking at in the spring. So kind of excited to get some more up-to-date current info on the lake.
Gary?
Yeah.
Question on that. I remember going on the DEC website. Now it's been a few months or maybe close to 6. I cannot find, they list every lake. Have you ever gone
I have not.
on their website? They list every lake. I've never been able to find Round Lake on that.
I know it's there because I got one of the little maps that shows the depth of the lake from there.
Yeah. But they used to, DEC would tell you about the water quality.
I think they get that information from the volunteer program that we're signed up for.
Oh, okay.
It's called CSLAP, Citizens Lake, Statewide Lake Assessment Program. And like Ballston Lake, they've got 20, 25 years of data collected by people who've been trained through DEC to collect the data. And we're in line for that, for
that's
training. So
That's good. And this thesis would probably complement something.
yeah. So. Village trustees.
Nothing from me except that.
Heidi?
No, nothing more. Thank you.
I just, not to dwell on the auditorium issue, but as the newer board member, I just want to say, I don't think any of this that happened was malicious in any way. I think it was just a true oversight. I was not there, but understanding was it was just thought to be a village event, as you said, and that, all the things that could have happened, as Tom was pointing out, yes, those could be very bad things if they happened. And that really we should treat this as an opportunity to kind of educate everybody as to what is the proper process, because even being on the board, I didn't know what the proper process was. I would have asked, but I ask everything. But again, I don't think it was a malicious intent, and I think we really should treat this as a opportunity for process improvement. Obviously, the keys is a must. The log in and out is a must. We can't have people just going in willy-nilly, but, I think we just need to educate everybody as to what is the proper process. The auditorium is getting a lot of use. I think it's a great thing. It's a lot of the focus that we want to talk about, the workshop, the survey. But we just need to make everybody part of the solution and not make it a bigger deal than it needs to be at this point, other than letting everybody know what the proper course is from this point forward.
Well, just to add one thing to what Tina said, I apologize if anyone took my comments to insinuate that there was malicious intent. I don't believe there was. I believe it was just a misuse of without our authority. And Danielle, I apologize. I did not. I don't want to jump down. You know.
Okay, Matt,
Nothing for me.
any update on the NICEAG when they're gonna
I
start?
actually emailed her this morning.
NICEAG, we're getting the streetlights replaced in the core of the village, so that's what I'm
I
talking
emailed
about.
her yesterday and have not gotten an update as of tonight.
Okay, and moving on to public comment. Peter.
Go ahead.
I'd like to, should we have residents of Griffin's Ridge here? I've been discussing with Griffin's Ridge, the fact that we have all these different entrances, these paths going into Griffin's Ridge. Some of them are a liability and a maintenance nightmare. I think we should consider amending the PDD to eliminate some of the paths going into Griffin's Ridge. Food for thought, something to think, work on.
Well, I would just like to say that the path goes down south. I think that's supposedly the handicap thing. That's dangerous.
Yeah,
That's a dangerous thing. If you couldn't, and probably this is the wrong time to get into this stuff, but if you're gonna change things around, you've got to accommodate the handicap. And if we close one part, we have to make the other one handicap accessible.
what makes that handicap accessible? Bar?
It's got a railing, but it's steep and it's got a 90-degree turn.
Yes, it's very steep.
The bar at the time was not for handicapped at all. It was there just for a safety factor.
Oh, okay.
And before any house was even built there, when they put that path through there, we knew this was a big mistake and going to be a nightmare to maintain the terrain that thing went
Well,
through.
you can talk to some of the folks down there and see what kind of suggestions they have. They want to close one and they just make one.
I mean, we do have a Y that goes
Yeah.
from both circles, goes from the north and south, right to the trail, and I think that would satisfy everybody.
See what the folks think.
That would still be village
Yeah,
land.
yeah, it's still village land, it's still village property.
Yeah, that was my comment. Is there a consensus about which
Yeah,
paths
there-
should stay and should go?
There it is. If I may.
Public comment. Rick?
My name is Rick Moretti, I live at 65 Village Circle, north of Karen. And one of the concerns that we have is we have this 15-foot, and we brought this to your attention when we first moved here, going on 3 years. There's a 15-foot easement or piece of property that belongs to the outlay between our house and the Margaret's that comes through the woods. Okay, it's really not very accessible. It's actually dangerous. I've seen people stumble with children and going through. So it also poses a liability because we don't have fences between that piece of grass that we might be able to take care of, fertilize, water. We take care of it like it's our own. The problem is that when people do come through, control who it is or what the element is that is coming through, but we have cameras on our house and we have video of parents with their children, allowing the children to come onto our property and jump around on our generator that's on the side of the house. Those children could get hurt, and then it's our liability. And I don't think that's something that anybody really took into consideration when they set these paths up. Now, I understand the woods are important to the community, and I agree with that. However, there's a path that comes through the woods and turns and goes right onto the Zinsman Trail. So is there really a need to come through somebody's open property and causing insurance liability and possible theft and other things? I mean, it's not a big piece of property. And I'd like just offer that up for consideration. It's an insurance liability, us and our neighbors.
Peter, is in the Peck Ave where the little drainage thing is, that's all village property, right? That's not, what's the name?
No, it's all village.
Okay.
9th Street goes literally through my yard, you know, I mean, literally through my yard. So people walk through that every day, you know, and it's, in my opinion, that's absolutely no different than, that's what the village is all about. It's a walkable village, you know, and there's paper streets, there's avenues of access. You know, I have no problem. It's a public right of way, you know, it's a paper street.
But how do we make his, a little more obvious that it's.
Well, it's not obvious to mine. I mean, it's literally not, I mean, unless you know it's a paper street, you would have no idea. It was my yard. So, you know, that's part of the village. I think we can move, I don't know if those boulders have been moved
Not yet.
or not. I think that's one thing we gotta do, is the boulders to make it more obvious, but that's what the village is. That there's paper streets that are unmarked, there's rights of way that, you know, you knew about it when you bought the house, that there was an entrance there.
Not necessarily, but that's not.
I mean, it was okay.
That's
It's
not-
it's
Well, I guess my point Matt, is this, is that if someone were to be on wherever your property is, I don't know where it is exactly, but.
9 Woodfield Avenue.
Okay, but if someone were to walk through your property and get hurt on your property and sue you,
Right.
you're okay with it?
It's part of the village and there's a paper street.
He's saying that that's village property.
It's village
But
property.
if somebody wandered onto your property
Right.
off of that,
Right.
and they got hurt on your property,
That's
or
part of life.
gone.
I mean, that's part of life. Somebody can fall into anybody's yard at any time. I mean, you know, it's,
But you don't want to mitigate the risk of that?
no, because I chose to move here. That was the village that I chose. And I don't want to have a debate with you right now, it's time or place, but that's just my thought on it is, I think we can move the boulders to make the access a little better, but personally, I think it's an important, it's one of only 2 access points from the core of the village, other than Cleveland Ave, to get into Griffin's Ridge. And I think Griffin's Ridge should be a part of our community and linked.
We have,
With walking and transport. So
and we have, I know Tom and I have certainly talked about cleaning up that path leading up to it, because it's kind of a mess, and making it so it doesn't go directly onto your
Yes,
land,
there are
moving the
ways we can do
boulders so that,
But in terms of closing it down, I'm totally against it, so.
Now, Peter, I was under the impression that you were actively pursuing getting that public way either gravelled or paved, leading to Peck Avenue extension.
No,
What happened to that?
having it, you know, I never really thought it was a good idea to pay, you know, to pay that. But I realize that all the paths that we have paid are a liability. They're falling apart. Unless we blacktop. We're dealing with a site that's very wet. The last thing we want to do is add more asphalt to this site. So it's like, the best thing we can do is just let it be grass and let it be.
So you're abandoning the idea of having a gravel then?
Right.
In which case, those would be paths that would then be, you know, it's the same situation as what they have, you know, which is, I'm fine with personally. I think it's a path, but it's gonna be a grass path, and then you're gonna have, yeah, it becomes the same thing. It's on marks, it's not a trail. You know, but which I think is something for the planning board to discuss too. Right?
Is there some other way that the public access can be delineated so that people feel comfortable using it? Like a type of border?
What about
Yes,
Right now, it's not being used, I think, for two reasons. One is we have those boulders that have been piled
Yes.
at the edge of the woods. They're not convenient to get over. And the other is it looks like they're walking to somebody's yard. And so people don't use it. And it was supposed to be a significant access point, one of two, from that part of the village to the older part of the village. And it's been stymied for those two reasons. And I thought we were actively pursuing changing that.
Also, I think that would make sense, but I think the absolute first step is to remove the boulders, because I think what happens is people walk around them and then accidentally walk onto their property.
No, that's not right. People go over the boulders and then wander onto our property and a neighbor's property, because that's the way it was set up. And we really weren't, that's another whole conversation, but it just opens up a lot of liability, and it's just, there's plenty of other areas to get through and getting out and be part of the community. And I'm not the only one that thinks that way. There are several other taxpayers that feel the same way. So.
any other comments? Mr. Rigney.
Yes, I'd like to go back to our security issue with the auditorium. This has been brought to the board before, and actually 83, we've been talking about absolutely bundling up this building so not everybody can get into it. You know, a lot of it due to when car theme was in it and kids were sneaking in and out of it, leaving the windows open in the middle of the night, so they can come in the next morning, so that's not a key. So I mean, there's a little bit more of it than just changing the lock. These windows are easy to get into. Any kid can go into the auditorium in the middle of the night, open the window, get on the stage, and God forbid fall off. All right, we all know that. I think it's a great idea that we do something about the security. Absolutely, we've been talking about this forever. Why this is becoming a big issue, because someone brought the light, just like anything else in the building. We have crappy water. The people that are working on this one person's house should have helmets on, because God forbid if they fall off and kill themselves, the liabilities, oh my God. When on the other side of the village, you have 5 guys walking on top of a roof with no helmets on, no linkage to any part of the roof, nobody saying anything. So I think we know what this is about, okay? But I do agree something has to be done about this. As far as not contacting the village about the use of tents in the auditorium. I mean, our manager of the auditorium, it contacted me a day before. She wanted to refilm a rock video in the auditorium because it didn't turn out when it was officially done in the auditorium the first time. The village was not aware of that. And I didn't bring it up to the village because, hey, did you know that happened? You don't know what happened because I never said anything. Nobody else did either. So these things are stemming from people that are nitpicking. I understand that. And maybe they have a personal vendetta, maybe they don't. Maybe it's a legitimate right. It is, security is a legitimate right. I think a lot of these things, I thought that this whole right was about copyrights for movies. We should have copyrights for movies. We've been working on that already. This has already been brought up. So I just think that, how many more times are we going to have somebody that comes in that has an issue, a personal issue, and makes it the popularity of something? I mean, this can go on forever. I held an event in this community room, streaming a live video. I had no idea. I didn't think about it. I had approval from not the board, but from people in the village to come in, show a show that a village resident was in, and I think a lot of the village residents attended. There was a lot of people here. Nothing was ever brought up about copyrights for that. Why? Well, I don't know. I don't know why, because nobody had something personal against somebody. Or maybe why all of a sudden this is coming up. So if it brings up good things happening as far as securing that building, which we've been talking about anyway, yes. If it's gonna speed up the process, that's great. Get the windows muffled up also. Right? So that's just my 2 cents in the whole.
I'd like to respond to that.
I would do. Right.
So first of all, I think, Scott, it sounds to me like you're suggesting I got on the debt against somebody. Let me say this, I spent decades in video production, and liability and copyright law is really important. If we, let me finish this, you know, Casablanca probably is still under copyright, you need the rights to that, but Hamilton is a massive property right now, and people, I'm sure, are very careful about who is using their property. That's why it's on Disney Plus right now. You know, they could, if they wanted to, and I'm sure that Hamilton's lawyers are not scouting around and finding out how many people watched it in Round Lake, but they could. And I'll tell you what, it's, we have a fiduciary responsibility as board members. I know that that's a violation of copyright law, and we really shouldn't be doing it. That's my issue with that. The other
So
part
you're just
is if,
basically agreeing with what I just said.
No.
We should have copyright.
oh, I said originally we should have a copyright law.
Okay.
I was saying that last week when I heard something about this, and then I heard it was canceled, and then it happened, and I didn't know it happened. Of course they should have the copyright. I don't know what it would take to get the rights to Hamilton. I mean, that particularly would be a tough one right now.
That's why we're working on this new.
Right,
new,
but we didn't do,
legislation.
but people showed it, knowing that it was a violation of copyright law, and they went ahead with it anyway, and nobody approved it. That is my issue with that. Let me
I
finish.
just explained,
Then
I
I
just had
have
something in this community room in a public area too that was streaming live too, that there had to be somebody out of the 8 people that were here knew it was probably not.
I don't know what,
I didn't think about it.
I don't know what you're
Maybe
referring
they
to.
didn't,
I don't know what you're referring to.
maybe they didn't think this was all going to happen.
I didn't know what you were referring to about the other video. I don't know what you were referring to.
Or a resident showed the master of arms for on Roy. It was
That was live TV though.
streamed, yeah.
It was live TV.
Streamed
It
live.
was showing it
You need to
live.
have a copy. Yeah, you do.
No, anyway.
Anyway, let me just reiterate one thing.
Right.
From the Motion Picture License
Mhm.
Corporation. We're not open to the general public. Do we still need a public performance license? Yes. Any place where a substantial number of persons outside of a normal circle of a family and its social acquaintances is gathered.
Mhm.
So I would
Okay, so
argue,
how many people were in the building? How many people were in
I
the building
wasn't there.
roughly, Scott?
I had no idea.
Okay, was it more than would fit in your living room? Because
And
what,
here?
no, I mean, in the auditorium, what they're talking about with this is if you're showing something in your
let him
living room.
let him in.
I think Gary told you how many people were listed. It was a small gathering of maybe 25 people.
9 of whom were from one family.
I heard there were 9 people from the family. The point is, 25 people is more than what they're talking about. When they're talking about that, they're saying, if you're showing it in your living room, we're not gonna come and give you a hard time about that. 25 people watching a Hamilton is asking for, it's just asking for trouble. And we're supposed to be not violating the law. We're supposed to be more careful about that. If we can get rights to show a wide variety of things, you know, we get some rights, we'll find out what we can and can't show, but we should be within that. Even more, I just don't think it's a good idea. And also I'm concerned that people were having an event in there and the board hadn't approved it, the auditorium manager didn't know about it. And truly, if somebody fell and cracked their head open and somebody decided to make a big deal out of it, and we're all going, well, we didn't know. It's on our liability insurance. We just had a meeting on insurance the other day and went over it in detail. We are liable because it's a village property. I don't know who organized it or was in here, and I don't care. It's
I
nothing
never said
to
it.
do with.
I never said you have.
You didn't
one thing
say,
that,
you said somebody did.
I
And
did,
just-
I'm not, I didn't
Okay.
say who it was, I'm just saying different people. When I said the water situation, I think we all know what we're talking about. I'm not-
I honestly don't, or I wouldn't
Okay,
be
well,
suggesting.
You're
that
one of the
you're
only ones in
talking
the whole
about
building
me.
that doesn't know. Okay, so
Okay.
whatever, I'm just saying that things that are,
Scott,
menial things that are brought to light by residents, okay.
I mean that, Scott, I mean it, that
Yeah, I
it's,
honestly believe you do, and I honestly believe it's leading to good things. We're gonna do something about it, we're gonna get copyright laws for movies that we can show in the auditorium. Movies will be shown in the auditorium. But when we get a copyright, we might not, obviously, we're finding out we can't stream certain things. You know, and then it's hard to get copyright for that.
Scott, can I ask you a question? What's your official title related to the auditorium?
I have no official title. I'm a liaison, I do many things.
But I understand.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah.
I just wanted to kind of echo one thing that she said, and I don't want to go on, because we're neighbors and, you know, we want to go outside.
Yeah.
But, you mentioned that people have, I don't know if you said personal vendetta or personal something related to.
I said, I'm not sure.
Well, all I know is, I don't know either who was there. I have no idea who was there. And no one's ever told me. So, you know, I brought this up because at first I thought it was a violation of rental policy, and then I found out differently. It was just a violation of, you know, we a lack of oversight on. We should have known that something was going on, and we should either shut the door or we should have endorsed it. And that didn't happen.
Right.
So, you know, you know what I'm saying, but I agree with you. Something will get come out of this.
You agree the same thing about the crazy Swedes? If it's something, for God forbid, all their movies and video stuff had fallen down and smacked somebody in the head, then we would have a liability problem with that also.
yes,
Okay,
we would.
so let's not single out.
Yes, we would.
certain- Correct,
Yes, we
okay.
would.
Yeah, just to make that.
All right, that's a good note to end that
I
topic
mean,
on.
let's shut this down.
Any other public comments before we move into executive session?
We got an executive session.
Fire department. Nothing on the Zoom world? Nope. No more? Okay, I will entertain a motion to enter executive session to discuss employment of a certain person. Second.
I'll say.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming.
Hope you enjoyed the show. It's better than Hamilton, I'll put it out. We'll be at our house.